So today we continue with First Samuel chapters 24, 25, and 26. We've skipped so many chapters here in First Samuel, which makes Papa John sad, but there's just not time. But the notes are in there. If anyone wants to go back and review the chapters that we're skipping, the footnotes and Papa John's insights, even in the phonetic pronunciation of Hebrew names, is all in there so that my children and my children's children, my future posterity, even my current extended family and friends that we share life today with. It's all there. I hope it helps somebody. I know someone can take this work beyond what I've been able to do. But what do you do when your name's David and the King Saul wants you dead, and your best friend is Jonathan, the king's son? Well, we're going to find out. Uh, First verse of chapter 24, and it came to pass when Saul, in Hebrew, Shaul, was returned from following the Philistines, that it was told him, saying, Behold, David, or David, is in the wilderness of Gadi. Verse 2, Then Shaul took 3,000 chosen men out of Israel, and went to seek David and his men upon the rocks of the wild goats. And he came to the sheepcotes by the way, where was a cave, and Shaul went in to cover his feet. And that's an idiom for to take a nap, but cover his feet. We learned a lot about that back when we had the episode about Ruth and Naomi and the covering of the feet. Uh, and I like to sleep that way too. Papa John, if my feet are warm, I sleep really good. So Saul went in to cover his feet, and David and his men remained in the sides of the cave. It appears they were already in this cave, and the king doesn't even know it. Verse 4, And the men of David said unto him, Behold, the day of Jehovah, the day of which Jehovah said unto thee, Behold, I will deliver thine enemy into thine hand, that thou mayest do to him as it shall seem good unto thee. Then David arose and cut off the skirt of Shaul's robe privately. And it came to pass after that David's heart smote him because he had cut off Saul's skirt. Boy, for being such a great soldier, he seems to have a soft heart, doesn't he? Verse 6, and he said unto his men, Yehovah. So he's invoking the actual divine name. Yehovah forbid that I should do this thing unto my master. Yehovah's anointed, to stretch forth mine hand against him, seeing he is the anointed of Yehovah. Wow. He knows his place and he knows God's. He honors God and he honors those God has anointed. Quite remarkable, because this man wants him dead, right? The story continues. So David stayed his servants with these words and suffered them not to rise against Shaul. But Shaul rose up out of the cave and went his way. So he stopped his men, and he himself did not take advantage of this situation. Was it the right thing to do? We're not sure, right? But he honors the Lord, and he honors the Lord's anointed. Quite amazing. What can we learn from that, right? Verse 8, David also arose afterward and went out of the cave and cried after Shaul, saying, My Adonai, the king. So he's using the title Adonai, my master, my Lord, king. And when Shaul looked behind him, David stooped with his face to the earth and bowed himself, still showing respect to the office of king, which God had called him to be. And as David said, Saul said to Saul, Wherefore hearest thou men's words, saying, Behold, David seeketh thy hurt. Behold, this day thine eyes have seen how that Jehovah had delivered thee today into mine hand in the cave. And some bade me kill thee, but mine eyes spared thee. And I said, I will not put forth mine hand against my Adonai, for he is Jehovah's anointed. I think that's important that the king understand. And when we're communicating with friends and family, we need to be able to answer the why or the because. And in fact, I had a stake patriarch teach Shauna Lee and I how to pray. He said to judge and gauge your prayers to see if you're praying for righteous things. You ask God to help you do A, B, and C, thus, thus, and thus. But then you always follow it up with the phrase, that I may. God, I'm asking for this, this, and this, that I may. And then your motivation is revealed if it's honorable or not, if it's aligned with doctrine, with scripture, with God's will. I think David is really good at this. Verse 11, moreover, my father, see ye, or see, yea, see the skirt of thy robe in my hand, for in that I cut off the skirt of thy robe and killed thee not. Know thou and see that there is neither evil nor transgression in mine hand, and I have not sinned against thee, yet thou huntest my soul to take it. He even references the king as my father. Again, showing respect for the office which he holds. Verse 12, Yehovah judge between me and thee, and Yehovah avenge me of thee, but mine hand shall not be upon thee. So he's leaving it in God's hand for this. Well, he's been secretly set apart already. He's been anointed to be the king, but he's not taking that into his own hands. He's allowing God to be the one for the timing. Again, how can we apply God's timing to our life challenges? I know my life challenges are nothing like David. No one's trying to kill me that I know of. Verse 13, and saith the proverb of the ancients, wickedness proceedeth from the wicked, but mine hand shall not be upon thee. So now he's even quoting the Proverbs. He's quoting scripture to the king. Verse 14, after whom is the king of Israel come out? After whom dost thou pursue? After a dog, a dead dog? After a flea? Jehovah, therefore be judge, and judge between me and thee, and see and plead my cause, and deliver me out of thine hand. So again, he invokes the name and leaves it to God. And it came to pass when David had made an end of speaking these words unto Shaul, that Shaul said, is this thy voice, my son David? And Shaul lifted up his voice and wept. And he said to David, thou art more righteous than I, for thou hast rewarded me good, whereas I have rewarded thee evil. And thou hast showed this day how thou hast dealt well with me. Forasmuch as when Jehovah had delivered me into thine hand, thou killest me not. For if a man find his enemy, will he let him go well away? Wherefore, Jehovah reward thee good, for thou hast done reward thee good for thou hast done unto me this day. And now behold, I know well that thou shalt surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in thine hand. Wow, he's speaking the truth, but his head is saying it, and his heart, he just can't keep it together. The jealousy returns, as we know. 2 more verses, and we'll be on to chapter 25. This is the king speaking. Swear now, therefore, unto me by Jehovah. So he's invoking the divine name, that thou wilt not cut off my seed after me, and that thou wilt not destroy my name out of my father's house. Posterity meant so much to them in this culture, didn't it? Even the king saying, please don't let my posterity and my name die off. And 22, and David sware unto Shaul, and Shaul went home. But David and his men got them up into the hold. So they weren't so foolish as to follow the king, even though in this moment he's speaking truth and is being honest. And yet he honored the oath that the king asked him to swear. Please do not let my seed die off. Remarkable. The oath and the keeping of oaths and how important it was in ancient Israel. And even today, from the military people I talk to that deal with the Middle Eastern nations, they say a man's oath and his word means everything, even to this day in that culture. Again, we could learn and we could do better in our culture, couldn't we? Okay, verse 1 of chapter 25. And Samuel, Shmuel, hey, remember the prophet? Well, here is a reference to he passes away. And Shmuel died. And all the Israelites were gathered together and lamented him and buried him in his house at Ramah. And David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. And there was a man in Maon, whose possessions were in Carmel. And the man was very great, and he had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. And the name of the man was Nabal, in Hebrew, Nabal. And the name of his wife was Abigail, in Hebrew, Abigail. 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 And she was a woman of good understanding and of a beautiful countenance. But the man was churlish. And what does churlish mean? Rude, ill mannered. And the verse continues, and evil in his doings, and he was of the house of Caleb or Kalev. Okay, interesting character we're being introduced to here. Verse 4, and David heard in the wilderness of Nabal did share his sheep. He's shearing his sheep. And David sent out 10 young men. And David said unto the young men, get you up to Carmel, and go to Nabal, and greet him in my name. And thus shall ye say to him that liveth in prosperity, peace be both to thee, and peace to thine house, and peace be unto all that thou hast. And now I have heard that thou hast shearers. Now thy shepherds which were with us, we hurt them not, neither was there aught missing unto them, all the while they were in Carmel. So this must be over a period of days. Ask thy young men, and they will show thee. Wherefore let the young men find favor in thine eyes, for we come in a good day. Give, I pray thee, whatsoever cometh to thine hand, to thine hand, unto thy servants and to thy son David. And when David's young men came, they spake to Nabal according to all of those words in the name of David, and ceased. So they spoke exactly what he said to speak, and then they stopped speaking. And Nabal answered David's servants and said, who is David, and who is the son of Jesse, or Yishai? There be many servants nowadays that break away every man from his master. Shall I take my bread and my water and my flesh that I have killed for my shearers, and give it unto men whom I know not whence they be? So David's young men turned their way and went again and came and told him all those things. And now here's David's response. This is understandable, especially we live in such a pampered age, but back then they spoke what they felt. Okay. And David said unto his men, gird ye on every man his sword. And they girded on every man his sword. And David also girded on his sword. And there went up after David about 400 men, and 200 abode by the stuff. So 200 stay back, 400 are ready to go and avenge the insult. It's more than an insult, though. In fact, here's a footnote from Papa John. In the first few verses of this chapter, David faces the death of Saul. I'm certain that this was a time of deep grief for David. David had his mighty men uh, work protection duty for the people. But after the death of his friend, the prophet, who has anointed him to be the king someday, I'm sure that's affected his deep grief. They partnered with a wealthy man named Nabal and his shepherds to guard them from enemies as they pasture their sheep. David comes to Nabal and asks for provisions for his weary men. Nabal rejects David's request with a vengeance. David and Nabal were both descendants from the tribe of Judah. Thus, there were more than just kinsmen, they were part of the same tribal family. David felt justified to retaliate against Nabal, and David has at least 600 men with him. 200 men stay with the baggage, the flocks, the items they travel with, and the others rode to Nabal's acreage, totaling 400 men. So David is intent on doing Nabal some very serious damage. And it sounds like they had a business arrangement, right? And he's not keeping true to his word, nor is he recognizing or appreciating their services of protection that allow him to enjoy his life of luxury in a sense of wealth. Verse 14, that one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, "Behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to salute our master, and he railed on them. But the men were very good unto us, and we were not hurt, neither missed we anything, as long as we were conversant with them when we were in the fields. They were a wall unto us by both by night and day." So they were protecting the sheep and the shepherds day and night. All the while we were with them, keeping the sheep. Now therefore know and consider what thou wilt do, for evil is determined against our master and against all his household, for he is such a son of Belial that a man cannot speak to him. Okay, what is a son of Belial? We're going to learn right here. So meanwhile, as this is all happening, one of the servants, the young man, goes back to Abigail, Nabal's wife, and told her what's happening and what's about to happen to their entire household. And the phrase sons of Belial is a biblical Hebrew idiom that translates to worthless or lawless men. Rather than deferring to the literal offspring or a specific demon, the term describes individuals characterized by wickedness, corruption, or a total disregard for morality and divine authority. Boy, Nabal fits the bill. He lacks the understanding of morality. He doesn't respect the authority, even of their business agreements. He seems corrupt and wicked, right? So what's going to happen? Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves and 2 bottles of wine and 5 sheep ready dressed and 5 measures of parched corn, which I bet was not corn. Remember, that's in English. That's from the King James translators. That's grain. We don't know what type. It's not corn. It's probably barley or wheat. And 100 clusters of raisins and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on asses. And she said to her servants, "Go on before me. Behold, I come after you." But she told not her husband Nabal. And it was so, as she rode on the ass, that she came down by the covert of the hill, and behold, David and his men came down against her, and she met them. So here comes the army, ready to do destruction and harm, and she stops them in their tracks. Now David had said, "Surely in vain have I kept all that this fellow hath in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that pertained unto him. And he hath requited me evil for good. So and more also do God unto the enemies of David, if I leave all that pertain to him by the morning light, any that pisseth against the wall." Okay, that's an interesting phrase. We'll save that one for later. That's probably another Hebrew idiom, if I had to guess, right? But here's Abigail. She's interceding. She's stopped the army, and she addresses, and she comes bearing gifts and food. Everything that her husband had failed to, they had been asked for, and he had failed to deliver. Verse 23, and when Abigail saw David, she hasted and lighted off the ass and fell before David on her face and bowed herself to the ground, and fell at his feet and said, "Upon me, my Adonai, upon me let this iniquity be, and let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak in thine audience, and hear the words of thine handmaid." Wow. And some of these renditions of this event are so beautiful, almost too romantic, but they are beautiful. "Let not my Adonai, I pray thee, regard this man of Belial, even Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him." His wife is speaking about him in this way. It's quite remarkable. She continues, but I, thine handmaid, saw not the young men of my Adonai, whom thou didst see." So Abigail knew her husband was equal to the meaning of his Hebrew name, Nabal, meaning folly or foolish one. In fact, it is likely that none of his own men had respect for such a worthless fellow. So, without informing her own husband, Mr. Foolishness himself, Abigail sprang into action to avert the impending crisis. I think that she's amazing. I love often the women of Scripture, and the Old Testament has more than you realize. And this is an exceptional woman here. Now, for clarity, when Abigail invokes the phrase "my Lord" when addressing David, or referring to her husband. In English, it's like saying my master or my Lord. In Hebrew, it's Adonai. She acknowledges their said roles, even possibly respecting or perhaps even honoring the authority attached to those roles. So this is my husband, and I will serve him. And this is David, and she respects the army and the fact that they've provided protection, and she's compensating greatly for a very irresponsible, foolish husband. 26. Now therefore, Adonai, as Yehovah liveth, she's invoking the name of the Father, his divine name. As Yehovah liveth, and as thy soul liveth. So as God lives and as you live, David, seeing Yehovah hath withholden thee from coming to shed blood, and from avenging thyself with thine own hand, now let thine enemies and they that seek evil to my Adonai, meaning David, be as Nabal, her husband, Nabal. And now this blessing which thine handmaid hath brought unto my Adonai, let it even be given unto the young men that follow my Adonai. I pray thee, forgive the trespass of thine handmaid, as if she's the one that's done it wrong. She's so gracious and so formal, beautifully so. For Yehovah, there she goes, invoking the name again, will certainly make my Adonai a sure house, because my Adonai fighteth the battles of Yehovah, and evil hath not been found in thee all thy days. So she's talking about not her husband here, she's talking about David, and she's acknowledging his authority and his position as she gives him respect. And, and she's motivated to save the lives of her entire household, not just her husband. Verse 29, she continues, yet a man is risen to pursue thee and to seek thy soul, but the soul of my Adonai shall be bound in the bundle of life with Yehovah thy Elohim. So beautiful. And the souls of thine enemies, them shall he sling out, as out of the middle of a sling. Oh, she knows his story. She knows he killed Goliath with a sling. Boy, she's got the gift, doesn't she? Verse 30, and it came to pass when Yehovah, and it shall come to pass, she continues, when Yehovah shall have done to my Adonai according to all the good that he hath spoken concerning thee, and shall have appointed thee ruler over Israel, that this shall be no grief unto thee, nor offensive heart unto my Adonai, either that thou hast shed blood causeless, or that my Lord hath avenged himself. But when Yehovah shall have dealt well with my Adonai, then remember thine handmaid. She's got the gift. She knows how to communicate. Quick review, she prepared enough food for 600 men of the men of David. She met David and his advancing army of men in a hidden part of the mountain. She humbled herself before David and basically apologized for his certain failures. Her mission was to do all she could to spare the lives of the household on both sides from destruction at the hand of David and his men. David heard the voice of reason from this woman and determined not to do the harm that he had planned. He accepted the provisions for his men. He declared that she is wise and hospitable. Reasoning had helped him determine that he was wrong to take matters like this into his own hands. God was teaching David to trust him for all battles. David, the man fashioned after God's own heart, blessed Abigail for helping to spare the lives of Nabal and her household, and the crisis is averted. But it's not over. Verse 32, and David said unto Abigail, blessed be Yehovah, Elohim of Israel, which sent thee this day to meet me. And blessed be thy advice, and blessed be thou, which hast kept me this day from coming to shed blood, and from avenging myself with mine own hand. For in very deed, as Yehovah, Elohim of Israel liveth. So he's invoking the divine name, the God of Israel, as long as he's alive, who lives, which hath kept me back from hurting thee, except thou hast hastened and come to meet me. Surely there had not been left unto Nabal by the morning light any that pisseth against the wall. Okay, I think it's time to deal with this phrase. What does it mean? I can need a drink, I guess. In the King James Version of the Bible, any that pisseth against the wall is an ancient Hebrew idiom used strictly to refer to males, usually little boys or men. So this is an insult. He's challenging the manhood of those that he was about to go kill. Excuse me. I find that fascinating, and I am amused by their trash talking in ancient scripture. You know, using the scriptures, you can get quite foul at times. There would have to be a warning label on some of this stuff if it was made into a movie. I guess reading it makes it less offensive. So Papa John kind of smiles. All right, verses 35 and 36. So David received of her that which she had brought him, and said unto her, Go up in peace to thine house. See, I have hearkened to thy voice, and have accepted thy person. And Abigail came to Nabal, her husband, and behold, he had held a feast in his house, like the feast of a king. And Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunken. Wherefore she told him nothing less or more until the morning light. She knows when it's a waste of time to try to talk to a husband who's drunk. Verse 37, But it came to pass in the morning, when the wine was gone out of Nabal, and his wife had told him these things, that his heart died within him, and he became as a stone. And it came to pass about 10 days after, that Jehovah smote Nabal, that he died. So Abigail then returned home. Quick review. He was feasting with his men and was drunk. After he sobered up, she confessed to him what she had done on his behalf. Nabal was so shocked at the turn of events that his heart failed, and he became like a stone for 10 days, basically comatose, and then he died. Verse 39, And when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, Blessed be Jehovah, that hath pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and hath kept his servant from evil. This woman has kept him from doing a bad thing, and he's asking God, invoking the name, that she be blessed. For Jehovah hath returned the wickedness of Nabal upon his own head. And David sent and communed with Abigail to take her to wife. Wow. There's a love story with complications, unfortunately. Doesn't he already have a wife, the second daughter of King Saul? We're going to learn more about that too in just a second. But I love his acknowledgement of God having spared him through this woman, and he recognizes the the cultural law of Levirate. The Levirate laws, not really, it's not the same as like the Levitical priesthood. The Levirites were the code of conduct and how to deal with widows, that they would never be widows and they would always have someone to provide for them. So he's taken it upon himself to make sure that she has a husband and she's provided for. And she's demonstrated great wisdom, and she knows his story. So I think whether that was part of her motivation or not, she will come out just fine in all of this. Verse 40, And when the servants of David were come to Abigail to Carmel, they spake unto her, saying, David sent us unto thee to take thee to him to wife. Okay, how's she going to respond? And she arose and bowed herself on her face to the earth, and said, Behold, let thine handmaid be a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Adonai, of my Lord. So she's giving them respect, and not only respect, she's offering to wash their feet. She's got a servant's heart. She knows the proper protocols of etiquette for their day. But look what happens next, verse 42. And Abigail hasted and arose and rode upon an ass with 5 damsels of hers that went after her, and she went after the messengers of David and became his wife. David saw Nabal's death as God's way of handling such an awful situation, knowing that death would leave Abigail uncovered with no husband to care for her future. David proposes marriage to her, and she accepts. And then this is interesting. Verse 43, David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel, and they were also both of them his wives. So he's now taking a few other wives, which kind of dampens the story to our day. We were right there with him, and now we're like, what's going on? It's kind of losing its a romantic charm. And here's the interesting part, verse 44. But Shaul, the king, had given Michal, his daughter David's wife. He had given, but then it continues. To who? To Palti, the son of Laish, which was of Galim. So the king has taken his second daughter, the one he'd given as a wife to David, and given her to someone else. There's a lot missing in this story, isn't there? The purpose of this lesson, as far as I can tell, Papa John, is just trying to pull things out because we can't apply everything here to our world today. But we're talking about Israel, who we are adopted and have become a part of. That's the blessings of conversion and coming to know the true and living God. So the purpose of this lesson is to reveal the spiritual truth that Yahweh calls on us to simply do the right thing. There are times that we must intervene in critical situations to do what we can to preserve life and love and witness and ministry. David was about to act on his own recon- his own reconnaissance. My goodness, Papa John needs a drink. Without consulting Yehovah. So he was going to do this terrible deed out of anger without consulting God. I hope we can remember that and slow down when we're angry and just count to 10. The old saying, my mom would always say, count to 10 before you speak. Give yourself a moment to gather your thoughts instead of just fly off the handle in rage. Abigail saw that the carnage was about to take place and her whole household was about to be destroyed. God used her to diffuse the situation. His plan is best, and our plan is to trust in Him and take the next step by faith. Sometimes God calls us to be silent, sometimes God calls us to action. May God help us to listen, and may we learn how He speaks to us so that we can recognize His voice, is Papa John's constant prayer. That's part of my prayer. I can find God's voice in the scriptures, but can I find it in my daily life? It takes practice, but I'm learning to just honor God, and He honors those that honor Him, and He makes more of my life than I ever could or have on my own. That's for sure. Okay, let's wrap this episode up. One more chapter, chapter 26. And Zephim came unto Shaul to Givah, saying, Doth not David hide himself in the hills of Keilah, which is before Yeshimon? Then Shaul arose and went down to the wilderness of Ziph, having 3,000 chosen men of Israel with him to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph. So here we go again. Are you kidding me? And Shaul, pitched in the hill of Keilah, which is before Yeshimon, by the way. But David abode in the wilderness, and he saw that Shaul came after him in the wilderness. He was wise, he and Jonathan, not to go home last time the king seemed to be honest and repenting in his heart. They knew it wouldn't last, didn't they? Verse 4, David therefore sent out spies and understood that Saul was come in very deed. And David arose and came to the place where Saul had pitched. And David beheld the place where Saul and Abner, remember Abner and the son of Ner, the captain of his host, and Saul lay in the trench, and the people pitched around about him. And then answered David and said unto Ahimelech the Hittite, and Abishai the son of Zeruiah, brother to Joab, saying, Who will go down with me to Shaul, to Saul, to the camp? And Avishai said, I will go down with thee. So David and Avishai came to the people by night, and behold, Saul lay sleeping within the trench, and his spear stuck in the ground at his bolster. But Abner and the people lay round about him. So here's another opportunity for David to take out the king. But remember how he was so principled last time. Is he going to remain as principled? Is he going to still honor God's anointed? The next verse, then said Avishai to David, Elohim hath delivered thine enemy into thine hand this day. Now therefore let me smite him, I pray thee, with the spear, even to the earth at once, and I will not smite him the second time. So he's offering to pull out the spear of the king and kill him for David. And David said unto Avishai, destroy him not, for who can stretch forth his hand against Jehovah's anointed and be guiltless? David said furthermore, as Jehovah liveth, Jehovah shall smite him, or his days shall come to die, or he shall descend into battle and perish. And he just saw that happen with the foolish man that we just read about with Abigail's husband. He just saw God take him out. And he's very confident at this point that he can trust God to do the same with the king. Verse 11, Jehovah forbid that I should stretch forth mine hand against Jehovah's anointed. But I pray thee, take thou now the spear that is at his bolster and the cruse of water, and let us go. So David took the spear and the cruse of water. Oh, I said cruse. So he's taking his canteen. So David took the spear and the cruse of water from Shaul's bolster. I think that means belt, and that get him and they get them away, and no man saw it, nor knew it, neither awakened. Incredible. For they were all asleep, because of a deep sleep from Jehovah was fallen upon them. Then David went over to the other side and stood on the top of the hill afar off, a great space being between them. And David cried to the people, and Abner the son of Ner, saying, answerest thou not, Abner? Then Abner answered and said, who art thou that criest to the king? And David said to Abner, art not thou a valiant man? And who is like to thee in Israel? Wherefore then hast thou not kept thy Adonai the king? For there came one of the people in to destroy the king thy Adonai. This thing is not good. He's basically challenging him. He's trash talking in a way, saying you're not very good at what you do, being over the army. This thing is not good that thou hast done. As Jehovah liveth, ye are worthy to die. Because what he did, he failed in his duty, which is a capital punishment when you're enlisted, right? And he's not just an enlisted man, he's over many, if not all of them, either some type of captain or general. Ye are worthy to die because ye have not kept your master, Jehovah's anointed. And now see where the king's spear is and the cruse of water that was at his bolster. And Shaul knew David's voice and said, is this my? So the king now is engaging. He's overheard the conversation. Is this thy voice, my son David? And David said, it is my voice, my Adonai, O king. And he said, wherefore doth Adonai thus pursue after his servant, referring to himself? For what have I done? Or what evil is in mine hand? Now therefore I pray thee, let my Adonai, the king, hear the words of his servant, referring to himself again. If Jehovah have stirred thee up against me, let him accept an offering. But if they be the children of men, cursed be they before Jehovah, for they have driven me out this day from abiding in the inheritance of Jehovah, saying, go serve other Elohims. So they're encouraging him to go to the other lands out of Israel, where they have false gods, and they're encouraging me to do that, is what David's saying. Now therefore let not my blood fall to the earth before the face of Jehovah, for the king of Israel has come out to seek a flea, as when one doth hunt a partridge in the mountains. He's trash talking again. Then said Shaul the king, I have sinned. Return my son David, for I will no more do thee harm, because my soul was precious in thine eyes this day. Behold, I have played the fool and have erred exceedingly. Yes, he has, right? Yes, he has. And David answered and said, Behold the king's spear. So he's taunting him and raising up the spear. I wonder, Papa John's curious. Do you think he just added this king's spear to his collection? Because he has Goliath's sword, right? And he even has his canteen for water. Behold the king's spear, and let one of the young men come over and fetch it. And Yahovah render to every man his righteousness and his faithfulness. Wow, that's how you pray for your enemies. Do you realize the power of that phrase? Yahovah render to every man his righteousness and his faithfulness. When we're told, in the New Testament, Christ says, pray for your enemies, pray for those who despitefully use you and abuse you. And how do you pray for those people? You can't put a curse on them. That's not proper use of prayer or priesthood. And here's an example where you basically pray for God to render unto your enemy righteousness, righteous judgment, which we would want that for ourselves, right? And his faithfulness. For Jehovah delivered thee unto my hand to this day, but I would not stretch forth mine hand against Jehovah's anointed. David, at this point in his life, is incredibly brilliant. His mind is tight around the scriptures. He knows the God of Israel and he knows God's words. He knows his code of holiness. Verse 24, and behold, as thy life was much set by this day in mine eyes, so let my life be much set by in the eyes of Jehovah, and let him deliver me out of all tribulation. So just as you witnessed me this day, King, may God, may Jehovah set his eyes and deliver me out of tribulation. He trusts the Lord greatly, doesn't he? One more verse and we're done. Then Shaul said to David, blessed be thou, my son David. Thou shalt both do great things, and also shalt still prevail. So David went on his way, and Shaul returned to his place. Wow, there's so much here, but we're out of time. But we got through a lot in one episode. We did 3 chapters. May we just do as David and be wise in the way we invoke God's name. But may we know enough to know that's a possibility. And may we accept God's anointed in our life and our station in life and trust God and in his timing that we will be delivered. And God, he's always promised us, and he's promised all of Israel, which we are a part of spiritually. If you'll be my people, I will be your God. Not only will I provide for you, as I did the manna in the wilderness, I will protect you. I will fight your battles for you. There's so much we can learn here. Think about these things, and may they distill upon your heart and on your mind. And I look forward to talking to you guys all again very soon.